Greetings everyone, this is Connor from DagoraTV, and in this video we're asking the question, are Bethesda Game Studios making a Game of Thrones game? Okay, so I know what you're all thinking. You just probably rolled through, scrolling through your subscription feed and seeing, are Bethesda making a Game of Thrones game, and think, what the fuck is this shit? What the hell? What's going on? Two of my favorite things going together into one. What's happening? And you clicked on the video, and then you're thinking, oh my god, no, this is fucking clickbait. You know, let me get time on my comment. But before you do that, there's actual premise for this. You know, this is actually a thing that's actually been floating around the Elder Scrolls community, the Bethesda community more specifically, and also actually the Game of Thrones community have actually been talking about this a little bit, because this is something that actually started back in 2011 and is now springing up again ever since Bethesda Game Studios director Todd Howard said that they are working on two large projects that you're going to be hearing about soon and be hearing from them more regularly. So the actual rumour of the Game of Thrones game being made by Bethesda Game Studios is actually a thing that come around because of a Todd Howard interview on VG247 back in 2011. Before Skyrim came out, actually, it was actually in September 2011, whereas Skyrim came out in November 2011. And the actual show, Game of Thrones, started then it was in its first season back in April of that year, and the book of Dance of Dragons actually came out that year for the Song of Ice and Fire universe. And he said, Todd Howard actually said that they were working on Skyrim at the time, so they couldn't make the game because they was actually offered to be able to make a game of the Song of Ice and Fire universe. And this is, I'll actually quote what Todd Howard said in the interview. He said, with the Song of Ice and Fire, we want to do that. People in our studio liked it, and it seemed a bit like it was something that we wanted to do. Before we were even making Skyrim, there was a conversation with George R.R. Martin and his people. They thought it would be a good match, and so did we. Actually, we then thought about doing it, and was actually wanted to spend our time. But it was actually wanted to spend our time ending up going into making our own world. It was tempting though. So we could definitely see that, this is actually, before the show got extremely popular. So there's obviously fans in the studio Bethesda who were a big fan of Martin's work, big fan of his books, and it seemed like something that, they actually kind of was seriously thinking about maybe going ahead with making a game in this universe, and would kind of coincide, with the possible story, or maybe just a game set in the world in the past. We don't know what that game had on, we don't know about the details concerning that game. What we know is that they was offered it and they were thinking about it. And they was actually turned down because they were making Skyrim. So could that, maybe come up again? Because, the show is gaining popularity massively, and I'm pretty sure that all of those guys at Bethesda Game Studios like fantasy to a certain degree, so are probably fans of Game of Thrones, because I haven't really met a fantasy fan who isn't a fan of Game of Thrones or a Song of Ice and Fire books, to be honest with you. So it's very likely to me that a lot of people would be very, very interested in making a game in that universe, and with a lot of people really wanting to have Game of Thrones games come out that is kind of fully fledged game where we can explore the world and have that kind of Bethesda style, Bethesda style game in the Game of Thrones universe. And I think that would be tremendous if they did it, because an example that I've kind of got for me is that I've got a friend who, he plays the odd video game here and there. He's not that interested in video games a huge amount, but he'd be very, very interested in the Game of Thrones one. And what he's said to me multiple times is, I want Skyrim in the Game of Thrones universe. And I was like, that is pretty much what you're going to get with the Bethesda style game in the Game of Thrones universe. And I think that would be really interesting to a whole bunch of people, to have that, not necessarily the story aspects of Skyrim, but, the better things, the exploration factors, how the world is the main character. And I think that would be really cool if, it did come back up. And I know that you all, what people will be thinking is, why is this kind of coming up again? It was 5 years ago, it's in the dust. Well, it's very possible because, Game of Thrones, the TV show, does finish in 2 years. There's still 2 books to go. The hype for Game of Thrones now is at the highest it's ever been. I mean, there's no way the people, are not going to be, the show is getting more and more viewers every single season. Season 6 is, I think it's just finished by the time this video comes out. And people are talking about it a hell of a lot and are loving the show. So, to have a game set in that universe, I think from Bethesda is going to sell incredibly well. And people will really, want to play, will really want to play that game. Me included, I'd be absolutely all in for that. I'd be very, very happy because of that. And I think it would be a great feature to have, for Bethesda in the studio. And also, I think for the people to, be able to go around and explore the world and go where they want to go. But at the same time, it's still very likely that because of the success of the show, they don't kind of want to do the idea of, You know, they don't want to do the Disney idea of, you know, getting something that's treasured and loved and just hashing shit out all the time, you know, just getting too much to handle, because, you know, at the end of the day, too much of a good thing, you know, isn't, there's that idea, you know, that too much of a good thing ends up being a bad thing, you know, which has happened, you know, with the Mega Man franchise and things like that, and it could very much happen with the Game of Thrones franchise if everyone just starts, you know, if there's more Game of Thrones just plowing out everywhere if they want to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a project, you know, because, like what we said, you know, Todd himself said, do we want to do it? I think the fans would really want to do it. There's people in the Game of Thrones community who've been kind of, I won't say been talking about it, but there's been mutters here and there that I've seen go around, more particularly the ASOIAF subreddit, which I go to after every episode of the show. And, you know, it's a very popular idea to get a Bethesda-style game in the Game of Thrones universe, because that's what Todd Howard said a few weeks ago. He said they're going to be Bethesda-style games, these new two projects, so it's definitely an idea that could be happening. So, I wanted to kind of have a little bit of speculation that if this was the case, there's by no means there's no confirmation, because there's no confirmation in anything of these projects. We don't really know anything about them, that they're Bethesda-style games and bigger than what they've ever done before. And it's got that idea to it that, you know, these are going to be, you know, huge mammoth experiences in the Bethesda way, and I think that's really interesting to a lot of people. And at this moment, there's any guess to what they are. There's any guess to what the theme is, their setting or whatever. We don't know at all, so we might as well speculate. And some of the ideas that I kind of had about the show is that obviously it's going to be open world, and in my opinion, Bethesda don't have the greatest writers in, you know, the gaming industry. I mean, so to do a fully fledged political drama would be epic, it would be cool, and I'd really want them to do that if they're going to do a Game of Thrones game. I just don't think they're going to pull it off with the current writers that they've got. I think they need to get other people in, maybe get some of Martin, you know, to kind of write the general theme of the game, but I doubt he's going to want to do that because he's got 2 books to write and he's under huge pressure on that at the minute, so it's probably going to be something that they're going to have to write themselves, and it's going to be hard for them to be able to do that with the people that they've got. I think they'd have to get people to come in, people maybe from the publishing outlet of George R. R. Martin, and really get it nailed to a pin, and, you know, get a few lore guys in there, the Song of Ice and Fire universe, and get it sorted and get it something really thrilling and, like I said, a proper political drama with known characters that we know about and we're going to frequently hear about. I think that would be cool. An idea that my friend had, which I thought was a really good idea actually, but it's a really good idea, but it's probably not what I'd exactly want. That to have the open world, you know, Bethesda game actually taking place north of the wall, and I was thinking this is probably the most easiest place for them to do it, because they could add to the lore of, you know, the stuff that's north of the wall, which has been heavily speculated about. Also, it doesn't have to be strictly fully canon, like say, like for instance, Shadow of Mordor was, because, you know, the history north of the wall isn't exactly written down, and, you know, it's always been kind of talked about in myths and legends and things like that, and the stuff hasn't been properly recorded of what's happened north of the wall. So to kind of have that, I think would be cool. I think it would be, you know, it's a lot easier for Bethesda to do. There's obviously going to be the Skyrim comparisons because it's going to be snowy. It's going to be, but, you know, being able to see the a huge wall and having a story over there, it's going to have the kind of like the, you know, the barbaric type of people again, which is going to be very samey to Skyrim, very similar to Skyrim, but I think it'd still grab people, it'd still be interesting to people. For me, if I was going to say what I would like one during the time before the Targaryen conquest, you know, before they invaded Westeros, where it was houses at war with each other all the time, you know, has making an alliance and, you know, ruling their kingdoms retrospectively, and those at war with each other constantly, and I think that would be a really cool time to have it set. Hear about a bunch of new people. It's at a time that then we could say that after the game, you know, 10-15 years after the game, then that's when the Targaryens came across, and I think, you know, it's a cool time for them to set it in. I think because, you know, it's right before, you know, a whole lot of change actually happened, and there's a huge amount of options, you know, in the universe of the Song of Ice and Fire. There's so many different areas that they could set it in, so many different stories they could do, and I think it would be a very hyped video game. And with the BGS logo on a Game of Thrones game, I think it would sell very, very well, because, you know, a Game of Thrones game is, for me, you know, someone who is a Game of Thrones fan, I'd love this. I'd be so happy if this is one of the projects, you know, if this is what they wanted to do, because, you know, it's something that I really, really want to come out and really, really want to happen. But the problem is, you know, is that, you know, A, picking a wrong time period, B, trying to replicate the TV show into a game, which never works in my opinion, and also at the same time being kind of like this tack on, I think is a problem that I've kind of got with this maybe happening. But you know, at the same time, you know, the idea of me being able to explore Westeros at my own speed and at my own pace gets me very excited, and But at the same time, you know, it is literally speculation. It is literally a rumour that has been kind of floating around the internet of something that may have popped up because they was originally offered it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Todd Howard confirmed that for us back in 2011 that they was offered it. It's just that, you know, is it going to be something that we're going to be able to get in the future? So, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys later. And make sure, you know, leave your comments below what you think about all of this, and, you know, follow me on Twitter, Twitch, all the good social media links in the description and all that good stuff. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.